Thanks. 2009 has seen an increase in mergers and acquisitions after a quiet 2008. The Obama administration has said antitrust officials will consider the first overhaul of merger rules in 17 years. Bloomberg's Lizzie O'Leary is in Washington with someone who will have input in that overhaul, FTC Chairman Jonathan Leibowitz. Lizzie?
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I'm here with John Leibowitz, and I want to ask you, because you all are taking a look at the M&A rules. We've seen an uptick in M&A activity in the past few months, certainly after a quiet 2008. What, going forward, will M&A mergers rules look like under the Obama administration after your tenure at the FTC?
Well, we are doing an update of the merger guidelines. We're doing that jointly with the Antitrust Division. But my sense is, while we might make a few tweaks here or there, the merger rules are going to be more or less the same as they have been. That is, we're going to try to stop deals that may substantially lessen competition. And if an acquisition or a merger doesn't do that, if it's pro-competitive, we're going to let it go. We're going to try to take a balanced but aggressive approach.
Well, one of the things that we talked about downstairs,
yes.
we had a little editorial board meeting before we came up here to talk about this on television. You all keep an eye on big market players.
We do. We do. We look at industries because we have authority that goes beyond simply blocking anti-competitive mergers, but also looking at anti-competitive behavior. So monopolization, for example, is sort of one area where we have brought cases in the past. No, with some success, not always.
Well, one thing I wanted to talk to you about got a lot of attention is the question of privacy. Certainly as we move into a great sort of brave new world on the internet. Obviously, the Google Books deal got a lot of scrutiny, certainly from your agency as well. They are working on a privacy policy. First off, are you satisfied with that? And second, overall, do we need to see some more proactive codification of what exactly it means to be an internet operator that is gathering customer data?
Well, those are two great questions. Answering the second question first, we sort of think that most companies have reasonably good privacy policies, but some don't, and they collect a lot of information on consumers, and consumers don't always know what's happening with that information, whether it's being used, whether they're being tracked, whether it's going to be sold to some other company. And so what we've tried to do is push the private sector, push industry to do a better job in informing consumers and giving consumers choice going forward. And then in some instances where companies, we brought a case against Sears recently, we're collecting information without telling consumers, we go after them and we sanction them.
Are you satisfied with what Google's done so far?
And with respect to Google, I think with respect to Google Books, I have to go back and sort of look at precisely what they're doing now. But I like to think that this is a process, under a judge involving multiple parties that's going to result in good privacy protection for consumers. And also, I think what Google's trying to do is probably very pro-competitive to have this library that's accessible to people. Well, but you want to have it with the right privacy policies, of course.
Congress wants to go further. They would like to see something called an opt-in, which means customers would be aware every time that their habits are being tracked. A lot of companies are pushing for an opt-out policy where you could just say, no, I don't want you to do that. Where do you all come down?
Well, speaking for myself, I'm a very strong supporter of opt-in under most circumstances. I think that opt-out, while it works sometimes, also means that the default is always, if I'm a company, I get to collect your information. You don't really have a say in it. If it's an opt-in approach, it's not perfect. But more often, it empowers the consumer to say, no, I don't want you to have this information. And so we've been working with members of Congress as they think through, including Rick Boucher, who's one of the leaders here, as they think through the legislation. And at the same time, on a separate track at our agency, we're trying to push very tough but balanced and fair rules of the road that protect consumers' privacy.
Well, one of the things you all are also looking at is in the pharmaceutical space, something known as pay for delay, where a brand name drug essentially can reach a settlement with a generic provider and keep them out of the marketplace for some time. Tell me about what's going on there. There are some moves in Congress to codify this, to push this farther.
There are, and we're very optimistic, although we know that the pharmaceutical industry is very powerful in Washington, but we're optimistic that we have a chance of getting these deals stopped. And as you pointed out, the pay for delay settlement is really simple. When a brand pharmaceutical provider says to its generic competitor, here's a couple $100 million, go away for few years. And when that happens, we believe at the FTC, and we're unanimous and we're bipartisan in this, and every single FTC commissioner going back to 2000, I think there are 11 of them, Democrat, Republican, and Independent, have all condemned these deals. But what happens is consumers don't get low-priced generic drugs. Those are usually about 15% the price of the brand drugs, and they're exactly the same. And so if you're uninsured, that means you're paying considerably more for the drugs you might need. And if you are insured, it means you're paying more for your insurance plan.
And yet, I got to tell you, I've been covering the healthcare negotiations on Capitol Hill. This isn't part of the big bill that's being negotiated right now. And that, to me, suggests that maybe the administration's willing to give a little bit.
Well, there are a lot of balls in the air, but I would say this: on the House side, we're part of the health care reform bill, and that's very, very important. And Henry Waxman and Bobby Rush are two of our champions. On the Senate side, because this is essentially a Judiciary Committee bill more than a tax bill, it's being marked up in the Senate Judiciary. We'll see where it goes. We're optimistic.
All right, John Leibowitz, thank you very, very much for talking with me. We're out of time. Lori, I'm going to have to send it back to you in New York.
Lizzie O'Leary, many thanks.